taken out of context.
Taken out of context.
We're taking things out of context.
Out of context.
Taken out of context?
Taken out of context.
Taken out of context.
That is so out of context.
Now, hey, hold on. We're gonna flesh this out because I don't want nobody saying we don't take things in context.
Tell me the context.
Let's play devil's advocate and play on Candace Owens' own turf that she is so familiar with just for a moment. Let's just, for argument's sake, go with her 759 different conspiracy theories regarding Charlie Kirk. Let's, for one plausible moment, just for argument's sake, say that it was a professional who ordered the hit on Charlie Kirk, that it was FBI, it was law enforcement, it was a snipe, that it was Israel, that it was Mossad agent, that it was CIA. Let's go ahead and say that was any military type of operation. Do you honestly think that if it was a professional hit in any way, shape, or form, that they would have been dumb enough to be caught on CCTV footage everywhere? Do you really think that if it was a professional, that they would be dumb enough to do this in public, in broad daylight, where over 3,000 plus people have cell phones and there's at least a dozen professional cameras recording at all angles all the time? Do you really think a professional is going to pick a spot where they're going to be seen, where they're going to be recorded? Do you really think a professional didn't do their due diligence, their recon ahead of time to make sure that they avoided all of these CCTV cameras or disable them or black them out? Come on now, really? Do you really think that a professional was going to pick a rooftop like this? I mean, I'm just saying, it's not the best angle. It's really not the best place to pick, considering that you have people seeing you and recording you, even in a crawling motion from where the tent was, from the side of the building. You got CCTV footage on campus on this side showing the person jumping off with said you-know-what in their hand. You really think a professional was going to drive around in their own car with their own license plate trying to circle back so they can pick up the evidence that they had planted and put in the woods, so that way they weren't actually caught with them having it? You really think a professional would do this? You think a professional would be this sloppy, this inexperienced to maneuver this way, to motion through this whole act this way? You really think a professional is going to be this ignorant to lead them right back to where they live, their family, their lover? For argument's sake, if it was a professional hit of any of those people, FBI, military, CIA, Mossad, anybody from Israel, anybody related to Bibi Netanyahu or the Jewish or Zionists, for argument's sake, do you think that they would have been sloppy enough for FBI and law enforcement to be able to pick up their trail and tail that quickly? If it was a professional, you don't think that they would have pre-thought this? But no, it's the FBI, it's law enforcement, it's the CIA. They're all lying, they're all bad, they're all corrupt. You cannot trust them. But even for argument's sake, that this was a professional, how did they somehow get led to this 22-year-old who happened to know exactly where Charlie Kirk was going to be before he was going to be there, had access to this type of instrument to do this type of thing to him, had done things like engraving ammunition, had done things like expressed hatred towards Charlie Kirk, very leftist ideology, pro-gay, pro-trans. And last but not least, do you think a professional, military, FBI, CIA, a Mossad agent, do you really think that they don't have drones to do recon before they would do something like this? And do you really think that they would be ignorant enough to pick this kind of public event to take out Charlie Kirk? Because if a professional was going to do this, They could have done so much simpler, much easier. They could have done it much faster. They could have done it with no witnesses, and they could have gotten away with it. Certainly to the point where the FBI and law enforcement weren't right on their tail. But let's just say this, for argument's sake, this is a professional hit. 160 yards is barely professional. You can't even say that's professional. There are kids that start training for hunting at 160 yards. I have seen professionals say that in the military, they start training at 300, 350 yards, all the way up to an impossible 1,000 yards. And that comes with the proper equipment, hardware, gear to be able to complete that with the appropriate scope. Do you really think that a professional, even at 160, at the very furthest 200 yards, is going to aim for an area as small and as difficult as this? Do you really think that that was a professional? Do you really think that it was more likely sloppy because the person had normal target, normal training that anybody would undergo if you're a kid or if you come from a family that hunts? With normal targets or paper targets, was aiming for the bullseye right here and didn't, unlike a professional would, account for the natural arcing at 160 to 200 yards and just happened to get lucky. Now remember, even Candace Owens, her conspiracy theory that he didn't act alone. Okay, let's go with that for a moment. One person, one ammunition, one trigger pull. That's all it took. You didn't hear anymore. You didn't see anymore because no more happened. It was a one, done, run. And hope I don't get caught. Does that scream professional to you? And do you really think after being caught, this young 22-year-old is really going to sit there after all the things that they confessed to the mother, the father, the roommate / lover? You really think that those text messages, those email exchanges, the videos, phone calls, cameras, CCTV, home security camera, you really think that all of that's not going to be brought to be played in front of a jury at trial? Candace Owens, believe it or not, is not one of the jury members. I'm not one of the jury members. Do you really think that he's just going to sit there and be like, yep, I did it, on the advice of his attorneys, only if he is given a plea to take capital punishment off the table? Mark my words. Will he finally sit down and do the right thing and admit what he did? But if it goes to trial and goes in front of a jury, he's going to get slammed with capital punishment because they are seeking capital punishment. And they have enough evidence and proof to prove that this was not a professional hit. Sure, conspiracy theories are fun, but this is a real man's life that was taken. And it came at the hands, deliberately, the deliberate actions and forethought of a person who was found, who had confessed to the mother and father, maybe not to law enforcement, but to the mother and father and a family friend who is a retired deputy sheriff, who also admitted to their lover what they did. Somebody who not once but twice in the indictment, which was published by the New York Times, and you can find on the court docket, said that he just wanted to end it, or he didn't want to be alive anymore if he was facing jail because he got caught. All of that sloppiness, all of that unprepared, non-planning, and he thought he was going to get away with it. See, a professional wouldn't do any of those things. A professional wouldn't have been recorded. A professional wouldn't have been seen. A professional wouldn't have panicked and fled the moment that they saw what they did. They wouldn't have panicked so bad that they were driving around block after block trying to retrieve evidence that they knowingly left. So yes, conspiracies are all fine and dandy, and they can be fun to dissect and pick apart. But this is a real case. This isn't a conspiracy theory. If this was a professional hit, none of us would know about it. We would only know one result, that Charlie Kirk passed away because a professional wouldn't leave anything else, especially not clear CCTV footage, and driving around in their own car with their own license plate, with their cell phone on location.